Welcome to the Continuous Improvement Lab. This is Season 2, Episode 11.
Great to be here.
If you're aiming to really understand what makes things tick, what drives success, well, you're definitely in the right place.
Absolutely.
And hey, if you like what we do, please hit that subscribe or follow button. It really helps us out, and you won't miss any deep dives.
Definitely do that.
We also want to give a huge thank you to Lanier Johnson Sr. and St. Williams for their amazing support. We really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you both. So today we're getting into something fundamental, I think.
Yeah.
It's about understanding and, more importantly, using both lagging and leading indicators. It's sort of the difference between just reacting and actually leading proactively.
Okay.
We've gone through some pretty solid research and a really interesting case study to pull out the essentials for you.
Exactly. Because it's so easy, isn't it, to just get stuck looking at last quarter's sales or last month's defect numbers.
Right, the history.
Yeah, that stuff tells a story, but like you said, it's history. It's already happened. So our goal today really is to show you how tracking what's happening now, those leading indicators, lets you actually influence the future results. We've got this research and case study document that lays it out really well. It features a company called Orion Components.
A good example.
Yeah. And we'll also touch on some bigger industry trends,
Yeah.
what leaders are focusing on. So the mission for us today, equip you with a clear way to balance these indicators for, better control and better outcomes.
Okay, sounds good. So let's maybe start with the basics. What exactly are lagging and leading indicators?
Good place to start.
So lagging indicators, they're the metrics that tell you what's already finished, what happened in the past.
Right.
In manufacturing, for instance, it might be your total output for the week, or maybe your quality scores for the whole month. It's historical data, essentially.
Okay, so they tell you the score at the end of the game, basically. You need them to know how you did.
Exactly. You can spot trends, see where you succeeded, or maybe where things went off track.
But, and this is the key point from the research, right? They don't give you much power to change things as they're happening.
Precisely. If you see those monthly quality scores dip, the mistakes, well, they've already been made. The products might already be out the door.
Too late, in other words.
Pretty much. Now, leading indicators. These are forward-looking. They kind of act like early warning signals.
Okay.
They give you insights into what might happen down the road. The research we looked at mentions things like checking your hourly production against the plan you set for that hour.
Like a real-time check-in.
Exactly. Or tracking how often a certain piece of equipment goes down, even for short periods. Or maybe how many times operators have to intervene to fix something on the line.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So instead of waiting till Friday to see if we made the week's production target, that's the lagging part.
Right.
A leading indicator like hourly plan versus actual tells us right now, maybe at 10 a.m. on Tuesday, if we're falling behind.
Exactly. And that immediacy, that's the power. It lets you react, or rather respond, and make adjustments before it becomes a big problem reflected in the lagging indicators.
And this really gets to the heart of the issue with only looking at lagging indicators, doesn't it? You're always playing catch-up.
You are. You're stuck in reactive mode. You only find out there's a fire, once the smoke detector from last week finally goes off.
Oh, yeah, good analogy. And the research and case study gives us a great real-world example of this with Orion Components.
They make electrical enclosures, assemblies, that kind of thing.
And initially, they were really focused on those lagging metrics, just like we discussed. Weekly output numbers, monthly defect rates.
And the case study really highlights the knock-on effects of doing that.
All kind of things happen.
Well, because they didn't have that real-time view and they inevitably fell behind schedule, which happened often they had to scramble.
Right.
That meant things like costly overtime for the workers trying to catch up. It meant paying extra for expedited shipping to try and keep customers happy.
And did it keep customers happy?
Well, ultimately, no. Not consistently. It led to customer dissatisfaction, which, as you know, is never good.
Yeah, sounds like they were constantly just chasing their tail. A tough spot to be in.
Definitely. So they realized, okay, this isn't working. We need a different approach. And that's when they decided to bring in the leading indicators more strategically.
So what did they start tracking? What were those forward-looking metrics for them?
Well, they started tracking that crucial hourly plan versus actual production, getting that immediate feedback loop.
Okay.
They also started looking at trends in equipment downtime, not just major breakdowns, but those little stops and starts that let them get ahead of maintenance issues.
Proactive maintenance.
Exactly. And they also tracked how often operators had to step in and manually fix something. which, could point to problems with the process itself or maybe training needs or even an issue with the part design.
And it wasn't just about, like, collecting numbers in a spreadsheet, was it? The case study talks about how they actually use this information.
That's a really critical piece. They didn't just gather data, they integrated it. They set up daily huddles, sometimes even shift huddles.
Okay.
And in those meetings, these leading indicators were front and center.
Yeah.
Supervisors, team leads, operators, everyone was looking at whether they were on track right now.
So making it visible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They put up visual dashboards right there on the production floor, showing both the lagging results and these leading real-time metrics, made performance completely transparent and, top of mind for everybody involved.
Wow. Okay, so that sounds like a pretty big shift in how they operated day to day. What was the impact? Did it work?
Oh, yeah. The results, according to the case study, were pretty impressive and came relatively quickly.
Like how quickly?
Within about 3 months, they saw a 15% improvement in schedule assurance, just sticking to the plan they set out.
15%? That's significant.
It is, because they could spot those potential delays earlier, right? Using the leading indicators, they could make adjustments before things snowballed.
Makes sense. Yeah. What else?
They also saw a 12% reduction in bottlenecks on the production line. Probably because they were tackling those hourly dips or managing equipment issues before they caused a major jam.
Okay. Smoother flow?
Yep. And maybe most importantly, their quality defect rates went down by 9%.
9% less defects. How did the leading indicators help there?
Well, by catching potential quality issues earlier in the process, maybe an operator intervention highlights a recurring flaw or a machine setting drifting. They could fix it before producing a whole batch of bad parts.
That's huge. Better efficiency, better quality. I imagine customers were happier too.
You'd have to assume so. It really shows that shift, doesn't it? From constantly fighting fires reactively to managing performance proactively, preventing the fires in the first place.
Yeah, definitely. And the case study mentioned something about the culture change too, didn't it? It wasn't just about the numbers.
Absolutely. That's a fascinating part. Giving teams that real-time data, empowering them to actually act on it, it created a much stronger sense of ownership.
How so?
Well, instead of just being judged on last week's numbers, operators and team leads could see in the moment if they were off track. And they could often take immediate steps to fix it themselves.
So more control at the front line.
Exactly. And that freed up supervisors to make better, more data-informed decisions throughout the shift, rather than just reacting to crises.
And for the higher-ups?
From a leadership view, it created much better alignment between what was happening day-to-day on the floor and the company's overall long-term goals. Everyone was pulling in the same direction, informed by real-time data.
So not just fixing today's problems, but building a more, I guess, agile and responsive company overall.
That sums it up nicely.
Okay, so Orion's a great example, but the research and case study also looked beyond just them, right? At broader industry trends and leadership thinking.
It did. And what we see when we connect Orion's story to the wider business landscape is a pretty clear trend across different sectors, manufacturing, sure, but also warehousing, supply chain management. There's this growing move towards balancing lagging and leading indicators. It's not just Orion.
So others are catching on.
Seems so. There's a Lean Enterprise Institute report mentioned in our source material. It suggests that organizations using leading indicators will see about a 20% improvement in proactive problem solving.
20%, wow.
And about a 15% cut in production delays. So leaders are definitely realizing that just looking backward isn't enough anymore, especially with how fast things move today.
And you mentioned it's not just manufacturing or operations.
No, not at all. The insights apply elsewhere, too. Think about engineering or complex supply chains. Managing project timelines, risks, it's critical.
Sure.
So tracking leading indicators there, things like maybe design cycle times, how long things are taking in the design phase, or supplier lead time variability, that's proving really valuable.
Any data on that?
Yeah, there's a Deloitte study referenced suggesting teams monitoring these early signals see about a 14% reduction in project overruns.
14% fewer projects going late or over budget. That's significant savings.
Huge. And then look at marketing or service industries.
Right.
You might not think of indicators in the same way, but the principle holds.
How so?
Well, McKinsey research, also in our sources, suggests using leading indicators like, say, real-time customer engagement on a digital campaign.
Okay, like click-through rates or time on page.
Exactly. Or in customer service, tracking average wait times or first call resolution rates. These things predict future customer satisfaction and loyalty.
Right.
The McKinsey data pointed to potentially 16% higher campaign success rates and around a 12% improvement in customer satisfaction scores when these leading metrics are actively managed.
So this idea really does cut across different functions. It's not just a factory floor concept.
Not at all. The core idea that get early signals, act on them seems pretty universal for any kind of outcome-driven work. And the leadership perspective kind of ties it all together. There's this growing emphasis on what's often called a balanced scorecard.
Balanced scorecard, okay.
Yeah, basically a framework that looks at both those real-time leading metrics that drive future success and the longer-term lagging indicators that tell you if you're hitting your big strategic goals.
Yeah, so connecting the day-to-day with the long game.
Precisely. And this thinking fits really well with, lean principles, agile methods, even Industry 4.0 concepts where being data-driven and adaptable is absolutely key.
Right.
So empowering teams at all levels, not just managers, to see and respond to those leading indicators, that's becoming recognized as crucial for building that proactive capability and making the whole organization more responsive.
This really does make you pause and think about your own context, doesn't it? For you listening right now, how are you actually measuring performance, whether it's at work or maybe even a personal goal?
Yeah, are you mostly looking backwards at the results after they're done, or are you actively seeking out those leading signs that could give you a heads up about where things are heading? It's worth taking a moment, Consider what those early warning signals might actually be in your world.
Right. What could you track?
Exactly. Is it steps in a project? Is it team morale? Is it customer feedback frequency? What metrics could give you that chance to make a tweak, make a course correction before you get a result you don't want?
And remembering, like we said, this isn't just for manufacturing. It applies pretty much anywhere you're trying to achieve something.
That's the key takeaway, I think.
So wrapping this up then, the real magic seems to be in the combination. You absolutely need the lagging indicators to know your history, to know if you ultimately succeeded.
Got to know the score.
Right. But crucially, you need to be actively using those leading indicators to get ahead of the curve, to actually shape the future score.
Yeah. The Orion components story really brings that home, I think. And the fact that this trend is popping up across so many different industries just reinforces how valuable that balanced view really is.
It really represents a fundamental shift in thinking, doesn't it?
It does. It's moving away from just reacting when something breaks.
The firefighting mode.
Yeah, exactly. Moving away from that towards building a system where you're constantly looking for those early signals, anticipating issues, maybe even preventing them altogether.
And the payoff, as we've seen, can be pretty huge.
Yeah.
Better efficiency, better quality, happier teams, happier customers. It all connects.
Better alignment with your actual goals. It touches everything.
Okay, so here's maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on a bit.
All right.
Think about one specific area, maybe at work, maybe personally, where you tend to focus mostly on the results after they happen. Just one area.
Okay.
Now, what are one or two early signals, those leading indicators, that you could potentially start paying attention to now? Things that might give you a chance to steer that outcome in a better direction.
That's a great reflective question. And if you want more info on this or other continuous improvement topics, feel free to reach out via our website. It's www.terrassinnovations.com.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much for joining us for this deep dive into performance management through indicators.
My pleasure. It's a fascinating topic.
It really is. And a huge thank you again to our executive producer and founder, Lanier Johnson.
Thank you, Lanier.
And remember, please subscribe or follow the Continuous Improvement Lab so you don't miss our next exploration. Thanks for listening.